Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 23 of In the 11. And today we have an amazing guest on that you're going to want to stay tuned for. He is an integral part in, me being here today in my playing career and then kind of further on down the road for my coaching career as well. And, gave me an opportunity when no one else really wanted to take a chance on me. So, I'm grateful to him, grateful to have him on the show today. He's a former collegiate coach, a licensed USSF guy, and the current ECNL director for FC Delco in Philly, among many other job titles that he has done before or is currently doing. So let's hit the music, get it rolling. So, cool. Episode 23. It's a big number to live up to. Are you prepared for the challenge?
I hope so, man. I hope so. I mean, listen, it's a pleasure to be on. In fairness, I am all time indebted to you for bringing you into a school and then leaving immediately after you were able to play. So I guess I owe you a couple. So I guess this is one step in the right direction for to give back.
Man, it's funny because I look at that now, and I remember at the time being like, oh my God, he's leaving. Like, what's going on? And now just like being kind of in the game for a little while. Now when stuff like that happens, you're like, oh, that sucks. But it happens so frequently, like that's just the nature of what we do. People take new jobs, get new, like leave, do something else. It's such a high turnover, I feel like, role, and everyone's kind of either moving up, moving down, moving laterally to a new position. Like, I think it's just, the industry is insane.
I know. It's tough. And I mean, in fairness, it's not like it was one of those where, we only knew each other for a small amount of time and then like I left, right? I mean, like we had been in the process of, you had been there for, I want to say it was a year already, right? Because you had come in that fall and then.
Yeah, I was there for that full year, your last full year.
So yeah. So, I mean, that was, and I guess we'll probably talk about a little bit of that stuff, but that was fun. That was fun times.
Yeah. So for those who are trying to connect the dots, as the listener, Jules and I know each other because Jules was the coach of, and by the way, I don't know if I even said his full name. This is Julian Fernandez. And I'm already calling him by his nickname, Jules, like you guys know him, but you basically should know him. So he was the coach at Chestnut Hill when I first arrived to Chestnut Hill, coached my first year, then went on to take a job at Temple. And then him and I worked closely for years after that. And a number, like, we basically worked everywhere together. Montgomery United, a little bit of EPYSA stuff, ODP stuff, Delco stuff, you name it. So that's kind of how we came to know each other and formed our working relationship still to this day. So talk to me a little bit about, from your perspective, being in the college coaching realm and then eventually transitioning away from that and going into the youth game, which is kind of where you're at now, where your bread and butter is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because I think that the pathway for a lot of people ends in college, right? So it's like you're in college. By the time you start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do after I'm done school? You're in college, you're working with coaches, you're working with players that kind of had the same like mindset as you, and you're going, all right, well, what do I do next? And if you want to coach, it's like, oh, well, I'll just be, I'll just coach here, I'll be a volunteer assistant or, I'll go somewhere else and be their GA, right? Which looking back, I should have done. I should have been a GA somewhere because it would have saved me a couple of dollars. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think people get into the college because it's highly accessible. But I think that there are some people that are built for college, and I think there's some people that are built for youth. I know in my experience, like I knew I wanted to be a college coach or a soccer coach since I was in like high school. Yeah. Like eighth grade even, and playing was just like the vehicle that got me to where like I needed to be. It's like, yeah, fine, like cool, I'll play, but like I'm only playing so that I can like experience stuff and then like be able to coach, right? So yeah, I mean, college was great. I enjoyed it. But I think right now, I mean, youth levels, I mean, I love it. I think you have such a high impact on players at, from the beginning. And I think that's so impactful. Especially for, for those of us that are doing it for I don't want to say the right reason, but right. But like,
Yeah.
For the reasons of, expanding the game in our country and pushing the level of the game in our country. Right. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
why you do what you do, so.
But I'm happy that you bring that up though, for the right reason, because I think that was something that I started to get a taste for and see firsthand as I, started college coaching. Because as you said, it's the collegiate coaching, depending on where you go, where you play, and who it is fairly easily accessible. And sometimes I worry that that's a blessing and a curse, because it allows people to, without the same mindset of you as this is what I've wanted to do, this is what I always want to do, and I want to have an impact on the game. Sometimes I felt like I was meeting guys who were like, college coaching, that'd be kind of cool. I get to hang around the guys and I'm on the field every day and it's still soccer and I'm getting paid to do it. And yes, that's an added benefit of doing what you do, doing coaching, but it's not really why you should be in the profession. So do you feel like that accessibility for collegiate coaching positions is that blessing and a curse, or is it just a positive because it allows so many people to kind of get their feet wet and get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a positive, right? I think it's a good way to get into, and listen. And again, I think it's driven by the higher ups at the place that you're at, right? Like, so if you're at a certain school and the coach there is really driven on, you come from, people come, or what's it called? They used to talk about like Bruce and Bob Bradley and like,
Yeah.
the coaches that played for those guys, right? Like, so like those guys were players and then they ended up coaching, right? So like, I think it's part of the environment that you get thrown into. But I think it's good because I think it's accessible. It's a good way to see whether you really want to do this or not. And just like you and I know, right? Like, if you're going to do something, it doesn't come super easily, right? Like, you're not going to be a Division I national champion coach because, after school, you're like, yeah, I'll coach for a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just the first step in going, all right, do I really want to do this? Do I really enjoy this? And then you find out pretty quickly that, all right, if I want to do this at the highest level that I can and to the best of my ability, like, there are a lot of hoops and mountains that I'm going to have to climb in order to do it, in an impactful way, and in a way that I'm going to be successful, and that the people around me are going to be successful, more importantly. So,
Yeah. Because that's what I liked about as well coaching and being around coaching was I felt as if, and obviously life's not always perfect. There's going to be guys in jobs that probably don't deserve to have that job. But I felt as if even the guys who were in positions, it always kind of came down to, like, if you couldn't really coach and if you didn't have it, like, you would kind of get found out. And the guys who really had it, had a passion for it, and would put the time in and put the work into becoming a better coach and actually had talent for it, you would start to see those guys, get moved up and find new positions and be in those roles that you'd want them to be in. Do you feel like that's kind of the case? Do you feel like that's maybe a testament to your career a little bit? Like, you were somebody who is good at this, and not to mention also put the work in and put the hours in to kind of get to the position that you're in now?
yeah, I mean, I think that you find out pretty early on that if you're going to do this, it's not cut and dry. Usually, if you're going to be a collegiate coach, very rarely do you start and end at the same place, right? Like,
Yeah.
so there's travel, and I mean, listen, this is super relevant to your experience right now, right? I mean, like, you want to do something, you travel, right? Like, you got to go away, you got to get out of your comfort zone. Like,
Yep.
I know guys that there was a guy at Temple, so the guy that was the second assistant there, um, before that he was at Florida, then he came to Temple, and now he's in Georgia, right? Like, you're all over the place. I think think that, I think that you're spot on too with it, that like guys get found out pretty easily. And it comes with like, are you willing to make the sacrifices that are like integral in you getting to where you need to go? Cause like some people are like, I mean, there's been plenty of, yeah, I'll do this for a couple of years and then, I'll get a regular job. Right. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're looking at Chestnut Hill specifically, and listen, I'm a Griffin for life, dude. You know what I mean? Like whether we like it or not. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I love Chestnut Hill. I love the opportunity that they afforded me. I mean, in fairness, like before that, I was a high school coach, and then I was a club coach, and then before that, I guess I was the assistant coach there for like 1 year. And they gave me the opportunity to be a head coach. And with that, like I knew, obviously, just being a head coach on its own at any collegiate program has its battles. But I think too, like there was a real gut check moment where you're sitting there and you're going, all right, well, I'm a part-time head coach, very part-time.
Part-time.
And it's one of those where it's like, you can either ride this out and do it for fun, or you can try to push yourself and create an environment and create a culture and create a program that's going to be, successful. I don't know if I ever got to those parts, in fairness, because I wasn't, I don't think I was there long enough to really measure those. But I think for me as an individual, developmentally and professionally, like I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what it takes. I learned a lot about, players, relationships, rapport. I mean, there's tons that go into it that you don't know that you're going to get those like educational bits, because you go into it and you go, yeah, cool, I'm just going to be a college coach.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this will be fun, especially at the school that I went to. Like, yeah, this will be great. Right. And then like 2 years down the road, you're going, wow, like I don't think I would be here if I didn't do that. I don't think I'd be successful in this specific situation if I didn't experience that before. Right. So there's so much more that goes into it. And I think, like you said, if in anything that you do, you get out of it what you put into it. And you're kind of at the mercy of whatever you're doing. Right. And thankfully I was able to learn a ton and make great relationships and have great experiences. So it was, it was a blast for sure. But yeah, definitely a blast. Definitely a learning experience for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It comes down to what you want to put into it is what you're going to get out of that situation. Like, because another thing that I learned in being around college soccer for a while now is, which, like every program is not created equal. There's not equality or equity or whatever the term is amongst collegiate coaches, or collegiate programs. Like, as you just said, Chestnut Hill College, a Division II school, has a head coach for the men's soccer team that still is to this day a part-time position. It has full-time responsibility. It has a full-time job title, but a part-time salary. And that's just something that coach and that program has always had to deal with. And, even in that very same conference, you have schools that have full-time coaches that, have positions in the athletic department and are able to come in every day to the office and just focus on soccer. So that's something that you then have to balance, as you come into that role. For someone like you, it's like, I'm going to get out of this what I put into it. This is going to come down to sweat equity from me. I'm still going to have to figure out a way to put food on my table in the, the off hours when I'm not here, but I'm going to have to figure it out.
A lot of Wawa.
Oh yeah.
In the car mostly.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Spot on.
That just reminds me of, like, I always used to joke with Zach about this, like, and I'm sure you can attest this as well. I became the master of eating / getting changed in my car.
Oh, like, unbelievable. The things they should be ticketed offenses for like the things that you had to do in the car, like as you're going from point A to point B. I mean, there were times where it was the fall season that you first came in. I think I was doing, and like you're talking about, like getting food on the table, like grinding. Like we were training at like 2:00 on the terrible grass field at PW, right behind the turf that we couldn't use because the high school field hockey team was using it.
Yep.
So obviously way more important than the men's soccer program at the local college. And then I was going to Colonial to do like 3 teams, like rec stuff. And then I was going to which it used to be called Continental, which is now Delco, and doing a session there. I mean, so like I was literally out of the house from 11 to like 10.
Yeah.
And that's just what you had to do, right? But the mindset is like, I mean, I was talking about this the other day, like the mindset is like, all right, listen, I'm going to do this now so that hopefully in 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, like I don't have to do this anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Like, yeah, that has to be the mindset, I think, for a lot of people, especially early on. Like nothing, whether it be from a playing perspective or a coaching perspective, nothing's going to be handed to you. You just have to grind for it. And it's like you said, you're doing it with the hopes of, okay, hopefully I'm not going to be 10, 15 years down the road still grinding my face off every day. Because then if you're in that position, and then it's like, okay, I think I've done something wrong here. Like,
yeah.
we shouldn't still be having this schedule. But I completely agree. It makes me think of, I told this story on the podcast before, when I was at Widener, and this isn't like not a shot at Brent or whatever, but I left Zach at Chestnut Hill. He was like, yeah, I think it's going to be more money and stuff at Widener. I think it's a good opportunity for you. And I was like, all right, awesome. I show up. I have the talk with Brent. And he's like, here's the number. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to go get a job, huh?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, paid coaching positions, like paid is a very loose term when it comes to coaching.
Sometimes just for all those you listening out there, sometimes paid means like, we're going to give you a lot of gear, so you'll always be warm. Like that's part of your salary.
Gear.
But like Wednesdays, I remember I used to wake up, they would train at 6. So I was living in Chestnut Hill still.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have to get out in Chester for 6. So that was leaving at like 5:00 in the morning. Then drive to, this is when I worked at the insurance company in Bala-Cynwyd. So I would drive across in traffic
terrible
every Wednesday, and it was slow enough while I'm driving that I can actually get changed in the car into my work stuff. Would work,
line up your tie,
work 9 to 5, then drive to Conshohocken, get changed in the car again, and then coach my Delco team. And I always feel bad. Some of those Delco sessions, I would be like, I'm trying to come and bring the energy, but I'm running on like 12, 13 hours of just going. And I'm
absolute fumes.
Yeah.
I know. And it's tough. And especially for those younger age groups. Cause what did you had 14s and.
Yeah, I had 14 or 15s.
Yeah. I mean, and even then, like you need to like push a little bit to get them going, especially at night. Cause like same thing for them, right? Like they're in school all day and they're coming to training, and it's like, sometimes they're just off. But yeah, man, I don't, dude, when I first started for Continental, well, I guess technically Spirit, actually Alex Culp just texted me. So big shout out to Alex Culp, who gave me my first job. I was his assistant coach at our Spirit United team. I think it was U14s. God, I don't even want to know I don't even remember what birth year they were. I think they were like 98s. No, wow. I think it was past that.
Any 90s age group is long gone now.
Oh my gosh, I know. But 19s are 02s now, which is wild. But anyway, so I was living in Manayunk. It was right after school. And I would drive to Downingtown 3 days a week. So like I would have to leave the house at like 2, 3 o'clock and drive all the way to Downingtown, which would take me an hour if I left at the right time, 2 hours if I left 5 minutes
at the wrong time. Yeah.
And then at the same time, I was doing valet at like Einstein in like North Philly from like 6 to like 1 or whatever the hours were there. But again, like all with the mindset of like, let me just do this now, because hopefully something else will come through. And then, I mean, listen, not that I don't think I'm in my landing spot right now. I think that there's room to grow, but
Yeah.
I'm happy where I'm at. I'm happy where I'm at right now. And I think it's been worth it for sure. It's definitely been worth it.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a position where you get to do the job that you want to do full time. Like, I try to talk about it a lot on this podcast, and I think sometimes it gets misconstrued by young players or young aspiring coaches, and they think it just comes down to how hard you work at coaching and how hard you work at your training and working out and things like that. And while that's so important, it's so important for you to get your coaching reps in. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't also have enough income to still be able to support yourself. And the honest factor is, like, in the beginning, in both of those endeavors, playing, coaching, you're probably not going to be able to support yourself just off of that craft right away. So, like, it's going to come down to, are you going to be willing to go and take that job that you really don't want to do 40 hours a week to still be able to support the dream that you want to do? Like, I think that's, a small part of the reason why I started this podcast, even from the start, was I just wanted to give a more holistic picture of, like, everything that's going on. It's not just, I want to be a college coach, so, like, I'm just going to go coach college. There's a lot that goes into that whole pie to, like, really make that happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about before, right? Like, it's, if the goal that you have in mind is to do it, like, that's how you pick out the guys that aren't, fully invested to it, because there's going to come a time where you're going to have to make decisions where, not that you can't go back on, right? But, like, you're going to be setting yourself back a couple of years. And it's not like regular, you go to college, you get your degree, you start working at an accounting firm and you're making, whatever it is, like 40, 50 G's a year, and, like, and you're set, right? Like, you go somewhere, you're like, hey, I want to coach. You start off as a volunteer, then you get upgraded to the camp guy, and you make whatever, money you get off how many kids you bring in. And, and then hopefully in a couple of years, you're full time and you're making, 20,000 a year as the second assistant. Right. But, like, in all that time, like, I think you got to just stay on course and say, like, I want to do this. I'm going to do this, and at the end of the day, I know we're talking about money and time a lot, but, like, I mean, if you're a coach, and like I said before, doing it for the right reasons, like, you're doing it because you want to impact the lives of, of players, and whether that be young or old players, but, like, impact. Like, listen, like, I mean, I don't even think I coached you for at all.
You never coached me in a competitive,
not in a competitive game, but, like, training and stuff like that, right? But, like, just within those moments, and that, like, that time, like, I mean, we have that connection, we have that rapport, like, we still talk, and obviously I'm thankful to be on here, and it says a lot about, like, it says a lot about the relationships that you can build doing what we do, right? Like, they're long lasting. They're not, they're not fake, so, which is good, which is a testament to what we're doing. And I think that's a big piece of it that people forget sometimes. So
yeah, 100%. And I hope for the listeners, I'm not trying to rag on this profession. Again, I want to give an honest opinion on everything. And you're 100% right. Like, the reason that we do all the things that we do is because, one, I think also it creates that much more of a reward for you when you do kind of get to those positions that you want to be at, right? Like, if your goal is to be the head coach of a college team, and everything that you went through to get there makes it that much more valuable to you, versus, like you said, graduating college and you go on a couple interviews, now you work for an accounting firm. That's just a different kind of level of difficulty that allowed you to get to that position. But 100%, like you said, in that journey, you get to do so much impacting of young people's lives, and also their relationship with this game. Like you said, I played for you now, God, 5-6 years ago.
Oh, dude, don't do that to me.
I know. I'm sorry. It hurt. It didn't feel good coming off my tongue either. But and like you said, now we're sitting here on this podcast. Like, that means something. There's a lot of value in that. And that's what I think, like you said, you get something very unique in this profession that affords you the opportunity to foster relationships like this.
For sure. No, for sure.
So you spoke about it a little bit, but I want to hear a little bit more. Right now you're the ECNL Director for FC Delco. And for anyone listening who maybe wants a little context on that, essentially, it's one of the more competitive. It's a national league in the United States, but it has a kind of regional component in where actually teams compete with other high-level teams in their region. It's kind of like one step below, I would say, of our academy system that we have right now. And so you're the director of FC Delco, which is a club in the Philadelphia kind of surrounding area. Where do you see your future with your role, with your club, and kind of just growing the game and growing the teams that you oversee?
Yeah, listen, I love Delco. I love the leadership there, and this isn't like a plug to say, like, because they're gonna find out like I was on this, right? Like, Jeff Zahn, who's our technical director and our academy director, is just great. I think when you get and like Rob Elliott, who's our GM, like another great guy, used to work for US Soccer. Like, I think when you're afforded opportunities that you get to work with like-minded people, I think really good things happen, right? So things have been great. Like we're in good spots. I think our academy teams are doing well. Our ECNL teams are getting there. Zach Tassone is me on the girl side over there. So again, like another like-minded individual who's doing really well over there. So no, listen, I think I'm excited to be part of something, and we've alluded to this before. Like, I'm excited to be part of something where I feel like I'm going to be here for quite a while. Like,
Yeah.
you grind and you grind and you grind, and then you hope that you're afforded an opportunity like this, and like finally, like I'm in an opportunity where I'm like, I can be here, right? I can be here. I see the long-term vision. I see the long-term goals, and I'm fully on board.
Yeah, like it's not complacency, but it's a little bit of comfort. Like you can take a breath.
Yeah, listen, I would say complacency on the resumes, right? But like,
yeah.
but like, if you're trying to build something like we're trying to build at Delco and get it back to what it, I think back to what it used to be isn't fair, because I think that we've created something, or something's been created that we've been a part of that could be massive, like from,
something new. It's not like a replication. It's something new.
Yeah, because listen, like Delco in the past was awesome, right? I mean, great teams, great players. Like we know guys that used to play there, and from a name recognition standpoint, like people know Delco. You know what I mean? Like I would go to coaching courses and be like, oh, I coach at Continental, and they'd be like, isn't that old Delco?
Yeah.
Or like new Delco? I'd be like, yeah. Like I don't know how to answer that question, right? But like, so now it's just like, yeah, Delco, and people are like, okay, Delco. But yeah, listen, I mean, it's great. I think the pathway that we have, the levels that we have, and you talked about it, like we've got teams in MLS Next, which is an evolution, I guess, of what the development academy used to be. That used to be run by US Soccer, and obviously with things going on, like they had to stop that, and MLS took over, and it's been great. I think it's something that it affords coaches and clubs that are within it to be part of it, and the decision-making process, which is awesome. And then, I know that some people see ECNL as like the next level, but in fairness, like MLS Next and like the academy has always been like, is like here. Like it's one of those where like the players and the caliber of players and, what goes on in there is I wouldn't say like unattainable, but like it's next level, right? I mean, we're talking about, if you look at, for instance, like my 07 group for ECNL boys, right, is a good group in our region. I would say that the best players on my ECNL group would probably be guys that would be, they'd be squad guys to start, right? Just because I think the environment from MLS Next to ECNL is pretty, is not super different, but those players are at MLS Next because that's where they're at, right? Like ECNL is a great vehicle that we have, and something that we're super happy to be a part of, because it is, for many areas, it's the highest level of soccer that's in the country. And it's good because it's very club driven, right? Like there's like national league that's run by like USU Soccer, which is a good league, but it's very like, you can have one team. Like, it's just like, oh, your one team plays in like in National League.
Yeah.
Where like for ECNL, it's like, we have 13
Your
to
club's
19,
in, yeah.
and we're in, and they have to be competitive. And if not, like ECNL comes to us and is like, you're not doing your job, right? So it's like, that's a huge part of it. I think it affords me an opportunity to obviously to work closely with Jeff Zahn and the academy still, because I loved being a part of it before when I was doing the 14s and the 19s for the academy. And obviously, if we're doing our jobs right, we're creating a really good pathway for players to kind of come into the club, compete at a high level for ECNL, and then I always tell guys as they're coming in, like, this is for guys that want to compete to play in the academy, right? In MLS Next. Like, if you're not with that, like, that's fine, and maybe it's not for everybody, but like, at least in the back of your head, you're pushing yourself day in and day out because you want to move over to Field 1 and play with those guys. So that's a massive part of it. And then, it gives me an opportunity to, I'm going to say a bad word in US soccer right now, or USU soccer, but like, we recruit a little bit. So I know it's like, oh my God, don't say that. But like, listen, I'm of the belief very much so that, clubs are great. Coaching is great, right? But players very much grow and develop from the environment that's created around them, right?
Yes.
And obviously coaches have a piece of that, like we talked about, like, you can drive the session and all that, but like, players are going to rise to the top if they're pushed. And I think players get pushed by the players that are around them, right? So if you get the best players in one group, in one area, to compete 3-4 times a week, I mean, you're going to see results. You're going to see players grow. You're going to see players, come out of that, competitive environment. And it's good to watch. I mean, that's what we're trying to create over at Delco, right? It's just competitive environments where guys, thrive and have a passion for just competing, right? Like, just competing day in and day out. So now, listen, I think there's a lot of things that kind of, I think that I still get to experience that I did it at college, right? Like, recruiting aspect and training aspects and stuff like that. But it's, I think that for me, college was always something where it was, let's get the guys in, right? So like, let's get the guys in, and that's the group that you're going to have. And that's what's, that's kind of your potential. Obviously you get to grow that a little bit, but with the way that, collegiate seasons are and stuff, like, you're playing 2 games a week. So it's like, you don't want to train too much because guys got to play, 90 minutes and whatnot. And it's, spring seasons are a joke mostly. I think, you don't get a ton out of it, but, with the youth level, I mean, MLS Next trains 4 times a week. ECNL trains 3 nights a week. Like, and then we play, a couple games on the weekend. So you have that, and we go from August, take a break between December and January, and then we're back in through June. So it's like, you get so much time with these guys, and you really get to see, if you're creating a good, strong environment, you really get to see them flourish for sure.
Yeah, I think it's been exciting because you see those dividends starting to pay off with the level of talent that like this country is producing, and the level of talent that just, and I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this way more than me because you're in and around it every day. Like, just the players that you see now and that you're, training with every day and coaching, I think it's a different caliber across the board than probably, 10, 15, even 20 years ago, because we've really changed the mindset that we have. Like, even when I was growing up, I was probably playing at one of the higher levels, and that was 3 days a week, and then sometimes games on the weekend or sometimes tournaments on the weekend. But now we've adapted that kind of professional model and brought it a little bit down into the youth levels of, it is 4 days a week, and you're going to play consistent matches, and it's going to be for that full season, as you said, from August to June. How do you think, I mean, I know you just touched on it, but how do you think that has just like completely revolutionized the way that we are developing players, and the way, and like, what are the players really getting out of that?
Yeah, I think that you saw it before. Like, I mean, listen, there's always been production of good players here, like whether it's been like on a massive scale or what. But like, I think that in the past, players have really, I think it's been at a lesser level because players, really the players that rise to the top do it on their own, and their mindset, from a young age, is, I want to do, I want to do this. I want to compete. I like competing. Like I like playing a sport. I want to be the best at it. Like I want to score goals, right? I want to win games. I think that what we're doing now is very, very much like we're trying to, like I talked about, like we're trying to create an environment that it maybe, maybe we can push a couple more kids to gain that passion as well, right? So maybe it's not just the best player on your team. It's, now you have 3 or 4 guys on that team that are going like, I really enjoyed competing. And I think that, I know people like to talk about, they like to talk about like the old times before, and, how things used to be run, and like how things are now. And in fairness, I think a lot of things that we did in the past, like weren't that bad, right? Like I think people look at like, that team only won because they have a fast kid. Well, no, like that team won because you guys don't know how to defend against a fast kid. You're just complaining against, about a fast kid, right? So it's like, I think a lot of the things that we used to do as far as pushing kids and letting kids, thrive within competition were really good. And I think we're taking a step back and going, listen, that all wasn't bad, right? Like before, I want to say like before Klinsmann came in and was like, this is the way that we're going to do soccer, right? Like the things that were done before, like they weren't bad. You know what I mean? I think that we kind of got into a lull, a little bit of like, it's all inclusive, right? And again, like I hate to say this, but like soccer's not for everybody, right? Like if we're, again, for the right reasons, right? Like I want to be a part of something, and I coach youth soccer because I want to create create something in this country where like we compete at a World Cup level. And I think you can call, I don't want to say ridiculous, right? But like it comes from the youth levels. It comes from, clubs like Delco, where we have the ability to drive that on a grander scale with the players that we work with. Like it's almost like accountability on us to like, you've been given this club and these resources, right? And these players, like you need to do right by them and like and push them along. And whether that means like US soccer training camps or involvement with the youth national teams, like I think that's realistic. I think that's realistic for clubs that are kind of on the same level as us. Like if we're doing our jobs correctly, like we've got guys competing at a high level from an early age. So I know I got on my soapbox a little bit, but like no, listen, the players that we have now are great. I mean, like technical ability are great, but I think you look at players and you go, you'll be at tryouts, right? And you'll see a kid like he's over there, he's juggling, he's taking a bunch of touches, right? And you're like, oh, you circle that kid like immediately, and you're like, oh, that kid's good. And then you get to playing like 7v7 or 11v11, and you're like, oh my God, that guy's so soft. He doesn't do anything. He plays backwards all the time. Like he doesn't do like, and I think that that's a big piece of it is like you get like Corver kids, right? Like they're good in small spaces, but like when it's times for the game, they're so unimpactful, right?
You go missing.
Like, yeah, that's like I think that's part of the environment that you have to drive is like, and I think we're seeing a lot more kids like that. Like a lot more kids are like impactful, right? And maybe they might not be the most technical guys. Maybe they can't juggle 100 times by the time they're 14, but like, they play dangerous balls into the box. They, they track down players. They win in on tackles. They're aggressive in the air. Like, and I think on a grander scale, like we're starting to see more and more players like that. So it's super exciting. It's super exciting, to be honest.
100%. Yeah. I think I understand what you're saying. I want to push back on one thing a little bit. Like, I understand what you're saying in the position where you're in, that the level that you're at and what you're trying to, environment you're trying to foster, the players that you're trying to work with and produce and create, there comes a certain cutoff where that is not for everyone. But I think what makes the game that we have like so special is that it really is, it allows everyone to be a part of it. That's why everyone in the world, this is the most popular game, because, you go to places like Germany and you have 13 different levels of amateur football. And even the guys and, even young kids who don't really want to do this in the same level that you're kind of speaking to, there's still a place for you in this game. And I know that's not like what you were trying to say, that there's only certain levels for where this game should really, allow people to enter. But I just think I get what you're saying, that I think what's changing now for us is that we want to be seen in the same, we want to be in the same sentence as those big European countries. We don't want to be anymore the country from a soccer perspective that gets looked down at or is seen as less than. We want to compete. We want to have, and for people like us specifically, it may not ever be plausible, but I want us to be in a position where soccer for us is competitive with basketball. It's competitive with American football. Kids want to come and play soccer because they see what we can do, like, and what this game can afford them, and not just say, well, like I could go play basketball and I could become the next LeBron. Like, you want to have kids look up to someone in this country that can do something to the same athletic level as all those kind of other sports that we have.
Yeah, no, and listen, I appreciate the pushback, because like it's not that soccer is not for everyone, right? Like any sport is for anybody. Like I can go outside and like shoot a basketball. I'm terrible at it, right? But like I can still try, right?
Yeah.
But like I think what I'm saying is like at a high level, and I think that there's misconceptions at the youth level where like you look and you're like, oh well, and I think some people go like, well, hey, my kid's pretty athletic, like he can't, maybe he's not big enough to play football, or he's not big enough to play basketball, but like he'll go play soccer, right? But it's like at the highest level, I think that it's not at the highest level, it's not for everybody. But that's with anything else. Like,
yeah,
accounting's not for everybody. Like I can't do, like I'm terrible at math. I'm still the amount of times that I have to count guys in training sessions, so I know like what to make it, like 77 or whatever. Like guys make fun of me because they'll move around and they know like I can't count them.
Stop
like,
moving.
Yeah, I'm like, guys, stop moving, and they like laugh at me and they're like, Coach, how many guys we got? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like how many guys do we got? But no, listen, I get what you're saying, and I guess I just using the words of soccer isn't for everybody is like not, I guess, the best way to put it. But like if we're pushing this thing in the right direction and we're trying to be competitive on a global scale, right? Like
yeah,
it there's going to be times where it's not at the highest level, it's not going to be for everybody. And I think that's where we have to kind of I think that in years past, maybe on from a national scale, like I think soccer has been looked at like maybe rec-ish a little bit, right? And I think it's okay to talk about a sport where it's it's okay to talk about competing. It's okay to talk about the byproduct of results. Like it's okay to talk about youth sports in that manner if at certain levels, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to get your opinion on this because I'm interested to see what you think. I feel as if, and especially even this year, it's been magnified even more because just as we closed the 2021 transfer window, you saw like the number of guys from the States that are going
Right.
over into Europe is probably at an all-time high. I don't think we've ever had this quantity and quality of guys, applying their trade in some of the biggest leagues in the world. And the way from my perspective, I see it is almost sort of like a funnel in the United States right now, where you have maybe a player that starts at FC Delco, but there's kind of some steps for them to move up in terms of development. Like they do very well at the Delco level, and then there's sort of that next in between step where maybe they get picked up by the Union Academy. We still have that kind of like in between step where usually a player will start, which is typical of most other places in Europe as well. If you play in Germany, you play for your local club, then maybe you get picked up by Schalke and so on and so forth. But I think what differs in our development model right now is that next highest level isn't, to play for the Schalke first team. It isn't to play for the Union first team. It's to then make the move across to Europe, right? So we kind of have two steps, whereas other countries maybe have one. Like it's the local club, it's then probably the closer MLS level or highest level in their area in the States, and then that final boss, that big jump is going across to Europe. And I've heard a lot of different opinions on this, like about whether that's that's the best in terms of what it's going to do for the development of our leagues and the development of our players, domestically. Obviously, there's still the flip side of it of just going and playing in Europe and being around the best players and best coaching is going to do benefits for the players that we're able to send there. Like, what is your, I guess, and this might not be a question. I'm just like spewing ideas here at some point. I'm trying to keep it as focused as I can. But what is your view on kind of that model right now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that I was watching the U.S. game against TNT the other day, and I think it was it Alexi Lalas? I think he said something to the effect of like, the MLS is started off as a buying league. Like it was like, who can we buy, right? Like what 35-year-old washed up guy that can't play, in Europe anymore. Let's buy them and bring them over here, right? Where I think now it's very much becoming a selling league. And I mean, you've seen it now, like loan deals for 2 guys to Swansea, AS Rome, like, so I think the model of soccer in the U.S. is very odd, and I think it's been odd for a while because we have the massive elephant in the room of where does college sit, right? Like how much does college actually drive the success of players? And I think the biggest mock on college is that like you're in it when you're 18 to 22, and it's such an important span of years for players if they want to be. I mean, what's his name? The guy that won, he won the Herman Trophy, I think 2 years. He's from Maryland. I can't remember what his name was, but like he was the best player in college for 2 years. It's gonna bother me that I can't remember his name, but like he was the best player in college for 2 years, and I think he's been a guy in the MLS. He's just floated, right? I don't think he's actually gotten a hold on like, and look at me, I'm talking about a guy that's in the MLS, right? But like, I think that
2018.
I want to say, yeah, maybe. No.
19?
Younger than that.
Younger?
No, yeah, 13, 14, or 15.
Oh, Maryland. 12 and 13 was Patrick Mullins.
Yeah, Patrick Mullins, right? Like, where's Patrick Mullins right now? You know what I mean? Like, and listen, this was the best guy in college for 2 years straight. Like he was unbelievable, right? Like he was above, and like now he's in the MLS, and it's like, okay, right? But I think that clubs like, obviously it's easy to pick out the Union. Love the Union, big Union guy. And like, easy ones like FC Dallas, and it's like, I think we went from we'll use the academy and it'll be good, and those players will go off somewhere else, or like I think it first started as like those academy players, they'll be D1 guys, right? Yep. And it's like FC Dallas early on took a hard step and was like, no, like these are going to be the guys they're going to be our first team players, right? And I think that the ability to sell those guys, I mean, like you look at Sporting in Portugal, right? Like they're like Ajax, right? Like those are clubs that are driven off of we're going to develop, we're going to create environments for players to drive themselves. They're going to become at a certain level, and we're going to be able to sell them, right? At the same time, right, I think there's a balance there where like some clubs are able to do a good job with still maintaining competition levels, right? Like Lisbon is still a good club. Ajax is still a good club. Southampton is still a good club, or even though they got smashed the other day, but like, these are good clubs that are able to move their good players on and then backfill them with new good players, right? Now I think we'll see what the Union are able to do with that now that they've they sold the likes of Aronson and McKenzie, and we'll see what the next couple of guys that come in and see how they do and whether the pathway for them is going to work. But I think it's exciting. I think even like years before, like when McBride and Donovan and Beasley and all those guys, like I think that was another moment where there was some success here, and then guys, I guess clubs from all around were like, all right, let's start to invest in American players. Yeah. I think that we're at a period now where I think that we're going to see this as a longer term, because I think that clubs from Europe are going like, okay, they're starting to model a little bit of what we've done in the past, where like you try to pull from the youth, right, and then bring them along. Like I don't know how many guys, like I think Jordan Morris is a dime a dozen now. We're a guy that he went to school, he graduated from school, he got drafted into the MLS. He's a main guy on the national team, and now he's going to loan to Swansea, right? Like I don't know how many other guys it's going to happen to, right? Like where it's very much the younger guys.
He very well might be the last kind of that breed. Like there'll still always be players kind of that will mix in here and there, like Chris Mueller from Orlando City, like he's kind of another player like that just will come in and perform and pop up on a radar. But I think I agree with what you're saying, that model, that player, you see it every year that as the draft progresses, like the draft is kind of dying. I don't know why we haven't done away with it altogether, because it's just it's not a practical model anymore for what we do in terms of soccer. And I think what was interesting for me is, and I've had conversations with people is, and at first I looked at all these players moving to Europe as a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because I thought, well, what is it going to do to our product of our league if every time we have, every Brendan Aronson that we develop, boom, he's gone.
Right.
But then I started to think about it more, and I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that our league has to be the highest level for us to still be able to produce good players and have a quality national team. You know what I mean? Like, and I always think back to the teams or the countries of like Brazil and Argentina. Like they're essentially selling countries, right? Brazil is, if you're the best player in Brazil, you shouldn't be playing in Brazil. And that's like, and there's never a doubt or never a desire to maybe make the Brazilian league one of the world superpowers and a world competitor. I'm sure it would be nice, but maybe it's kind of a model that we can adapt as well. It's the goal isn't to have MLS be the best league in the world, but maybe it's for our MLS system to develop the best players in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was alluding to with like talking about Ajax and sport, or Ajax and Sporting. Like, I think the league in itself is becoming, a selling league. I don't think I think eventually it'll become the league in itself. And because it's easy to look at like long-standing leagues like the Bundesliga. Like the Bundesliga is very much like our national team is driven based on the successes of our league, because like they have so many German-based players that play in those leagues. But like that's a league that's been around for how long, right? Like the Premier League is how long, right? So I don't know. Obviously, you want MLS to be as good as it can be, but that doesn't. I don't think that. I think with the things that are happening right now with players going away and being successful, right? Not just going away, but like finding success, right? I think that you don't have to look at it as like, okay, our national team is never going to be good unless our MLS league is good. Now, in fairness, like our MLS league is doing really well. It expands, like it's got good players. But I think a big piece of that is the teams that are diving into their academies, I think are doing well. And I also think too, like they get recognition for it, right? Like teams that sell their players or loan their players, like it's a big deal. I mean, like Reynolds from FC Dallas, like that's a huge deal. You know what I mean? Like,
just looking at the FC Dallas like pedigree right now is kind of insane to see the players that they have put out are like shopping still, right now. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. I mean, but like they were so ahead of the curve as far as like we're going to create like good player. I mean, like Red Bull, I think Red Bull's gotten away from it a little bit, but like, I mean, look at the guys that used to play for Red Bull, like Tyler Adams. What's his name? The center back for that was on the that captain the national team the other day. Why can't I remember?
Long?
Yeah, Aaron Long, like another, that's another Red Bull guy. Tim Weah was a Red Bull guy. You know what I mean? Like these are clubs that were like, we're gonna do right by the youth academies, and they're not. I don't want to say they're reaping the benefits, right? But like they get that recognition because those players that are playing at a high level now and that are impacting the national team on a high level, where they come from, like that matters, right? and not to be like, and obviously I love the Union, and I'm a, because I'm from here, right? But like the Union had no, like what you were talking about with the draft, like the Union had no picks.
Yeah.
They sold all of their picks, like, right? So it's like I'm just wondering how much longer it's going to be before everybody's like, now we're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Because once you get to a point where when you start looking at the later rounds of the draft, it's just half the picks aren't even used. So, you get to a point where, okay, well, if only 10 teams are actually going to use their pick, does it make sense to even do this?
Yeah.
But I guess a follow-up question that I have to this topic as a whole is, I remember reading an article about, like, for example, Pulisic played, is a Hershey, Pennsylvania guy, played for Classics, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Played for PA Classics. And this article was essentially along the lines of saying how from his transfer fees of like going to Dortmund, going to Chelsea, that a percentage of that would have gone back to his initial home. And I don't know, I'm not as well versed in the finance and sport management side of the game as I maybe should be. But I do know, especially in the European model, as younger players are moved up to bigger clubs, there is financial compensation kind of for that player, because that's the way that it works in soccer. Not unlike American sports that we have, where we trade for players. It's you're a property kind of, and you're bought and sold. What do you think? For example, a club like PA Classics, even if they get a percentage of that Pulisic transfer fee, that completely changes who they are as a club, and allows them to do so many different things. And
Right.
and I guess that's kind of what I was alluding to as well. Like for you guys, you produce so many good players, and usually the best ones in your area, like, where do they go? They go to the Union, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there a model that would work for us somehow to allow a club like yourself to kind of get rewarded in a monetary way for all of that, talent that you're really producing and developing? And I'm not to say that Union isn't developing talent as well, but in some instances, they're kind of cherry picking off the top of all the best local clubs.
Yeah, and I think, and obviously now we're talking numbers, dude. So like you totally lost me, right? But no, I'm talking like, listen, I've heard that. I've also heard that Classics was like, don't worry about it. I think that back then, like, right, like when Pulisic went, and and I think McKennie kind of did the same thing, where it was connections that they had on their own, right? Or like that somebody kind of helped them with, where it wasn't, for instance, and again, like a Union relation, right? Like Ernst Tanner used to be a part of Red Bull. So like Aronson's connection to Red Bull, like that comes like between, like within those relationships, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's a pathway there. I will say that I think that MLS clubs aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing if they're not pulling the best kids off of, and again, it's tough, I think, but I would be hypocritical to say like, oh, we don't want to send kids to the Union, right? Like obviously we want to have very competitive MLS next teams, and we want to compete in the same league, because we do, right? But like at the same time, there's going to be resources, there's going to be things that we maybe can't, provide to those players. And at the end of the day, I think, again, we're talking about the environment that's created, right? So like you would think that an MLS next team, an actual MLS academy, the environment is different, right? Because now we're talking about, it should be the most competitive players, right? Like the Union should have the most competitive players within the region. And they even get guys from like outside the region now. That goes into like homegrown signings and all that stuff, which, I'm not super privy to, but like, if they have the ability to do that, right? Like, listen, like I can go out to EDP events, or I can go out to APL, like, showcases and stuff. And like, I can look for kids, right? But like, I can't go to Florida and watch every single MLS team and
Yeah.
MLS next team and find the best players. If you're able to do that, you would hope that you're able to bring in as many good players into one environment as you possibly can, right? And I think that creating an environment where you have some of the best players and you have as many good players around each other for long periods of time, training 3, 4, 5 days a week, there's going to be things that rise to, like, there's going to be players that rise to the top, and hopefully that pushes our national team. And I kind of think that's where we're at now, because I think that a byproduct of that too is, I think that you would have to imagine that Christian Pulisic going to Dortmund at a young age, the environment that he found himself in from a training perspective had to be more competitive than what he was in before, right? Or else why make the jump, right? Obviously, the why make the jump is like, oh, I'm at Dortmund, like I might be able to play for the first team because I'm training there, right? But like you would think that at that level, the environment is very, very competitive, right? And I think McKennie too. I think, Reynolds too. Like that's why, Hope, like that's why those guys are going over there, because number one, they probably got a few connections, but like we're talking about on a grander scale, right? So we're talking about like MLS teams and academies being able to pull from the US. We're now talking about like the Dortmunds and the Schalkes and obviously, not on the grandest scale, but like they should, and they have the resources to be able to pull from a wider area, right? So now we're talking like, now what does that environment look like? What do those players look like, right? And I would say that, listen, the more that you can do that, why not, right? The more that you can get out of your comfort zone, why not? And I think from a young age, I think if the opportunity presents itself, why not just experience it, right? Why not? So, like I said, I would love for us to do it ourselves, right? But I don't think that right now, maybe we don't have the resources to do that. Maybe one day we will, right? Maybe the union one day will be able to, to pull people from all over the country as far like as a youth academy goes. But right now, like, why would we stifle players' experiences and potentials to be selfish? And I think that that's maybe what MLS was a little bit ago with the league, and saying like, hey, like our national team's only going to be good if our league's good. Like,
yeah,
that's not true, right? So
yeah, and see, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, and because I'm greedy, because I understand completely where you're coming from, and you're 100% right that fostering these better environments in your club, in other clubs across the country, and then as well, as you say, as that cream rises to the top in these MLS, kind of the pinnacle in our country, having these training environments is producing good players, and you're seeing that. The where I'd push back a little bit, and I guess where I see it from in terms of, like you said, who has the resources to be able to do it. I think, let's take that Brian Reynolds example, and let's say he's a Delco player and he goes to Roma for $9 million, 9 million euros. If that money is then, some of that money is then allocated to Delco, now maybe that affords you the opportunity to, because, the fact of the matter is right now, if somebody wants to come and play for Delco, like this isn't a secret, they have to pay. And they have to pay a hefty sum of money.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's scholarships and stuff, but it's pay to play. It's pay to play.
Yeah, it is. So now maybe you're in a position where any kid across, the Philadelphia tri-state region that maybe financially can't really afford to play for your club at that current moment, now all of a sudden you have some of this transfer fee. Maybe, for the next 2 years, players don't have to pay to play, or something like that. That's the only way, like, because I do think that is maybe the one final thing that we need to somehow work towards correcting a little bit. And because I love the game, you love the game, and that would be, that would suck from my perspective to have a kid who loves it, has the potential, has the talent to do amazing things from a young age, and they're not afforded the same opportunities as someone who is just in a better financial situation, or their family's in a better financial spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think if we take the Ajax and the Sporting, examples, like those clubs are able to maintain what they can do because of the fees that are associated with the players that they sell, right? Like it's not like, yeah, fine, you can have that guy. Like, no, like it's a business, right? Like we need to be able to, essentially fill the void of what was left, and we do that by putting money back into the academies. I know there was a lot of talk and it kind of simmered down with Pulisic, but I don't know who oversees that process as far as what fees are, delegated to what individuals. I know like a big piece of that I think there was a lot with DeAndre Yedlin, like, cause he was at Seattle, but before Seattle, he was at, I think it was he was at a non-MLS academy, right? I can't remember what it is, but like, that was the thing, is like, you need to be able to provide evidence that says that he was part of your academy in order to get that money allocated towards you. And I don't think from when these guys first started, like, that was, I don't think that the academies were developed initially, right back in, whenever they were, like, to go, we're going to create players so that we can sell them. Like, no, like, we're going to create a really good league that's going to be competitive and drive performance, so that, like, we can have good kids and like a good league, right? Like, I don't think that the idea was like, yeah, we're going to sell guys. So like, I don't think that the processes of like, what do we need in order to prove that we should get money when we sell, we sell Christian Pulisic, right? So, and I think that's a trouble that's run into, is like, how do you prove that? Like, your got soccer registration? I don't know.
Yeah.
But listen, I agree. I think, because something that we talk about from, like I said, from a visionary standpoint is, we don't want to be pay to play at Delco. Like, the more, like I said, we do a really good job with scholarships, because, our mindset is like, we're not going to tell a kid like they can't play because of financial reasons. Like, we're going to do everything we possibly can in order to help them, do what they want to do. Right. But I think that's the question, is like, is how, like, donors, because obviously, like, scholarship has to come from somewhere. Like, it doesn't just like magically, because again, like, being involved in MLS Next, being involved in ECNL, like, boys and girls, like, you have to provide other things. Like, there are other categories that you have to like check the boxes. Like, we're fortunate that we get to use Proving Grounds, which is an absolutely great facility, right? But like, we don't get to use it for free. We've got to record games. Like, that's not free. Like, we've got to do all these things that like they cost money. Like, we've got to figure out a way to make it so that it's more attainable for people. And that's the big thing. And I think whoever figures that out first is going to be a massive driver in the success of youth soccer in this country, right? Because there are, like, the money has to go out, right, to pay for certain things. But if you can figure out, I guess, that middle ground of how you allow like kids to play and not do that. I know, like, for instance, like Continental, I think their 14s back right in the beginning were like completely free, right? The 14s Academy was completely free. Like, no one on the 14s paid for it. I think those kids were actually 2001. So like, they're freshmen in college now. But I think, that's the big question. And I think obviously the more that you can do to gain some of that based off of the players that leave, I think the better off you're going to be. But I don't know who figures that out. I don't know who makes those rules. So I think it'd be good for us to try to, like I said, I think it died a little bit. I think that was big news. Like, everybody was trying to figure that out. And now it's kind of like, I guess we're just not worried about the millions of dollars that you can get, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of alluded to it. It's a little bit of a kind of like walk before you run type like ideology of, yes, in a perfect world, we would have this system across the board for all of our players to be able to play and not have to pay for it. But like you said, right now, I think the main goal is just, can we get really good at coaching and developing players and fostering this environment that we keep kind of harping back on? Is like, that has to be the goal number one. Like, if we went into it kind of backwards and just thought about all of it from a dollars and cents perspective, it wouldn't have mattered, because it's like, well, you're not really doing what you've sought out to do, and then that's develop quality players and really do something with this game. So I think it's just something that it bops around in my mind, because I think it's probably where we are starting to go as we continue to see players do really well in this league and move on to bigger and better things. And I think that's going to be the next piece of the equation is how do the smaller clubs like yourself, how do they factor into this equation? Where do they fit into the big puzzle that is kind of youth soccer and into professional soccer in the world?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that helps us, right? I think that helps us because if we have more clubs firing on all cylinders, like the MLS teams are able to do, like now we're talking about, that's just that's bigger numbers, right? So now we have a bigger pool to choose from. So that's going to be good for us on the grander scale. So, yeah.
My final kind of area that I want to dive into a little bit with, and I'm interested to see from I've had a couple of different coaches on this podcast before, but I don't know if I've had kind of like individual trainers on before and just coaches that are kind of in a different atmosphere than you are right now. So I'm interested to see when you talk about talent, like we've talked a lot about players and talent, identifying talent, developing it, all those types of things. It's a broad question to ask, I know, but for example, like you said, when you're at tryouts and you're scouting and you're evaluating talent, we don't necessarily have to go into kind of position by position, but what's just kind of some of the things that you look for? Like what's something that jumps out at you right away when you are scouting or evaluating a player?
So involvement. I mean, if guys aren't involved and tuned in, and I think we use a word a lot, like it's called like busy, like stay busy, right? And I think that means a lot to like, people will say right now, like from that comment, like, oh, well, how's a number 9 supposed to stay busy or stay involved? Well, like, yeah, I'm not saying that they need to track back inside their own 18 and like make a tackle, right? But like what I'm saying is like, can they be tuned in, right? Can they be involved in the game? And when, when I'm watching games, and even from like when I was recruiting in college, like I used to bring in a lot of guys that were central midfielders, right? Like they used to play central mid. And in fairness, that's because probably most of those guys were the better players on their team. They were probably the more technical guys on their team. They were the more involved guys on their team. And then, as you progress, I think being a coach at a college is trying to figure out where guys are going to be able to play long term, right? Because I think the guys have an idea of like, okay, I'm a number 10. It's like maybe there you were, but like at this level, maybe you're an outside back, maybe you're a winger, maybe whatever. But I think, yeah, to answer your question, like the biggest thing is like involvement. If guys aren't involved, if guys aren't tuned in, I think that that's the biggest thing that translates to any level. Because I think with that, there's a passion there. I think with that, you can see there's an eagerness to grow almost. Like I know, like you can't look at a kid and go like, oh, that kid's gonna, that kid wants to learn how to play soccer, right? But it's like you can just see like there's an energy to it, right? And there's a, I'm too old to use the word vibe, right? But like there's a vibe to like those players that are like, I think that that's going to be a guy, or a girl, like that's going to be able to go into a different environment and not lose themselves, right? Because I think that's a massive aspect to it too. Is you can look at players from afar and in their own environment where they're comfortable and say, yeah, they're good. Yeah, they're good. Like, oh, that's a good player. That's a good player. Like, oh, they scored this many goals, or oh, they've had this many clean sheets. But it's like you're looking for translatable traits.
Yeah.
That can transfer. You like that alliteration, by the way? That can transfer like into other environments, right? And I think part of that is you can see if a player's highly motivated, right, on their own, and they're highly engaged into what they're doing, I think you're not worried about a comfort level with them. Like you can see that they're going to be somebody that is able to go kind of in any environment and still be themselves and still be, successful.
Now, I think it's an interesting idea. Like, for example, when you talk about you go out and you're looking for some of the best players that you want to bring into your club and you want to have them become a part of your environment. Do you feel like what's the difference kind of between when you're going out and you're looking for someone who has kind of those qualities that you talked about, those traits that you're looking for to implement into your teams or into your club, what's the difference between going out and trying to find that talent and then now you're actually working with those players day in and day out and you are, trying to develop them, and you kind of almost maybe press reset a little bit, and now you're looking at the player from the perspective of, okay, what can I do? I liked those things about them and that's why I brought them here, but now I'm trying to take them to the next level. So what are the things maybe that they have kind of as a deficiency in their game, or how do I get them to, double down on their strengths even more and become the best player? Like, not to say that you're looking for the holes in a player, but you're trying to kind of, like, your goal is to take them to a next level. You brought them here for a certain reason, but how does that transition for you to then be like, okay, that's great that you can do those things. Now here's where we go from here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've got certain aspects and certain attributes that we want from our players, right? Like, I think I think with the high involvement comes like mobility, right? So like, players, you have to be able to move. You have to have a technical baseline. I think there's foundational pieces that players have to have in order for us to even, to look at them. And I think one of those foundational pieces is the mindset that you can see from the way that they conduct themselves on the field, right? And I think I would say your question is answered differently based on ages, right? I think that if you're looking at a play, I think the mentality side of is you're part of the base and the foundation for younger ages, right? And I think once you get to older ages and players are kind of in their positions, because obviously, like, by the time you're 17 or 19, like, you're not a guy where you're like, I can play anywhere. Like, you've got like a couple of spots that you're pretty comfortable with. So I think from a development standpoint, when they're within the club, is, we're also looking as they get a little bit older, is, the mindset's there, the characteristics, the personality are there. And then obviously, like, if we're looking for some things specific to positions, like, those are the pieces that we're looking for, and can we grow in those? Like, I know I was listening to Colin Cowherd the other day, and he talked about, I forget where it was. He was talking about Alabama, right? And he's talking about like Alabama versus LSU, and he's talking about the guys that get drafted. He's like, somebody told him, like an NFL exec told him, like, he goes, I love getting guys, and it might not be LSU, right? But he's like, I love getting guys from LSU, right? Because like they're at a good spot and you can see where they can go. And he's like, getting guys from Alabama, it's the worst thing in the world, right? Because they get massive amounts of guys that go into the NFL, right? But he's like, for most of those guys, like, they are what they are. Like, when you bring them in, like, they've kind of hit their ceiling for the most part, because Nick Saban gets everything out of them, and that's why they're so successful at Alabama, right? It's not a knock on Nick Saban. It's just that's what he does. He gets everything out of you. So I think when we're talking about, I don't want to say that we're looking for like LSU guys at a younger age group, because we're looking for high ceilings, right? Because for us, we're never looking just at like what we can get out of you. Like, we're always looking at the ceiling for guys. But I think that obviously as you get a little bit older, you start to get closer and closer to your ceiling. And I think that we're looking about more specific things. And I know I'm being super vague, and we're looking about more specific things as you get a little bit older versus like the foundational aspects when you're a little bit younger. And I think that, main attributes that we're looking for from the younger ages and even into the older ages is like personality, athleticism. Because again, like, I am a firm believer that, years ago, people used to say like, oh, that kid's just fast. Like, he's not really a soccer player. And it's like, what? But a kid that can do 1,000 toe touches inside a box is a good soccer player for you guys? Like, I don't get that, right? Like, those players have a good base, right? Because soccer is a sport, right? And soccer requires athletes, right? So like, you can build into those players. Now, like, are they going to be able to, are they going to be as technical at that moment as a kid that, does the Corver stuff all the time? Maybe not, but is their athleticism a little bit more translatable to what you're looking for in a player long-term? I would say yes, right? I would say yes. And I'm going to get on the soapbox a little bit here too. Like, and I think that, and you're gonna get me in trouble because I'm gonna have to like we're gonna have to edit stuff out because I'm gonna get in trouble if you post this whole thing. I keep thinking to soccer isn't for everyone. I'm like, why did I say that?
Guys, soccer is for everyone. Okay, if you want to play soccer, you can play soccer.
The competitive environment isn't for everyone, is what I meant to say. Just a disclaimer there. I think that, and I had a conversation with a parent the other day, right? And he said something to me to the effect of like, I guess I'm just used to the European game. Like when he was complaining about his son playing in a specific position. Mm-hmm. So my first thought was like, what? And I think that in this country a little bit, we look overseas, right? And we see we're so like, oh, everybody should play like Barcelona and everybody should play like Man City now. And it's like, even Man City has developed away from, like, Pep has developed a little bit away from what he used to do at Barcelona, right? Because he doesn't have Iniesta, he doesn't have Xavi, he doesn't have those guys to be able to pull those. He doesn't have Messi. Like, he's got different players, and I think the game has developed a little bit more so to be. And I know, and it's like, it's weird to say direct because direct is such a bad term. It used to be such a bad term, right? But like, I think that we in this country, we try to create soccer players, and our vision for soccer players is guys that can pass the ball short and connect 300 passes before we even get a shot on goal, where it's like, you're looking at it and you're going, we have some of the most athletic individuals in this country from any other country, right? Like, I mean, we're talking there are human beings like LeBron James and like DK Metcalf. Like, now I'm not saying like they're going to play soccer, right? But like the athleticism that we kind of toss to the side because we say like, oh God, he's got a terrible first touch. Like, yeah, well, he's 12. So like, that makes sense. Like, I think that the style that we have tried in the past to like implement is so difficult and so unrealistic on a grand scale. That like, we can just be the United States. And like, you look at the teams like of Bob Bradley and stuff, and it's like, they were hardworking individuals that grinded out results. And it's like, we can still do that and still call that soccer. Like, that's okay, guys. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I think from a philosophical standpoint, and to tie it back in, like from a philosophical standpoint at Delco, like, we want to play in that way, right? Like, we want to do a lot of work in the opponent's half. And if that means that we look to bypass the last line of pressure and like squeeze the ball and disrupt and press and try to win the ball higher up the field so that we don't have to connect 50 passes to get forward, like, that's okay with us. Because I think that translates more into a competitive side, into a willingness to get results. And I know results is another bad word, right? But like, the whole reason you play sports is to do well and compete, right? Like, like even kids that are playing basketball on the side of the road up on my house, like, they're not just shooting around. Like, eventually they're going to go, all right, we're going 2v2, like 1st to 11. You know what I mean? Like, you're playing. So I think that we're looking for players that want to compete, obviously, right? But we're looking for things that are very translatable. And I think, people used to say like, these are bad words, but like athleticism and pace and physicality, like, these are all drivers for ceilings of players, right? And I think it's our job as clubs and our job as coaches to obviously hint at stuff that helps them, from a technical side. Like, you're not going to let a player like take a donkey touch out of bounds every single time and say, hey, good job, Steve. Like, no, Steve, that's not a good job. Like, you need to adjust your body this way. Like, those are little aspects of it, right? But I think from a standpoint of what we're looking for and what you do within the club when players get in here, like, you're driving competitiveness, you're driving passion. And I think byproducts of those and byproducts of being in good environments is that those players are going to learn how to play soccer, right? Because they're not going to do the same thing over and over again and lose games or take bad touches, or because what comes from that is like, Brendan's eventually going to yell at me and say like, stop giving the ball to the other team. And I'm going to go, yeah, maybe I should. Right. And then like, just in that moment, maybe I adjust and I become a better player. But that's soapbox stuff. I don't even think I answered the question.
I'm really happy that you brought this up because I think it's such an important thing. I think it's funny that Barcelona team, I come back to this idea of a blessing and a curse. Like that was absolutely some of the most amazing football I think that we'll ever watch
Absolutely.
in our whole lifetime.
Absolutely.
But it almost released this idea on the whole world that like, well, I want to play like that. And you don't understand how truly difficult it is, as you said, to play that way. Like if you dive more into that style, that philosophy, and you talk to players who played in that team, like Thierry Henry used to say, and Thierry Henry didn't last super long playing in that system.
Mhm.
Is a world-class player, but in those systems, there's other world-class players that have been there that were in that system that were just kind of cast aside. They didn't fit in the system, or Pep didn't have use for them. Like Henri used to say, it was one of the most difficult systems he ever played in. Not only from like a mental perspective of just trying to figure out how to play this way, but physically. They would say he would just have to make run after run after run in behind, and he would never get the ball. And I think that's something that people sometimes miss, is that they think it's just, these midfielders combining underneath, and everyone's just kind of floating around, and then all of a sudden Messi's open. And it's clipped in behind, and now he's in on goal. Like the reason that there's that space to be able to play is because of the athleticism of the wingers and the physical workload that they're putting in to create that space and develop that space. So like the idea that it's strictly technical and it doesn't also have that athletic component to it isn't actually the case, because that Barcelona team was very, very athletic as well. You just don't conceptualize, Xavi or Iniesta as superior athletes, but they played a different role in that team than what a lot of other guys did. And that's why I say I love that you bring this up, because I think what's exciting about the players that we're producing, and as you said, kind of our national team as a whole, is we do still have some of those characteristics and are trying to play to those characteristics of, we're an athletic team. We have good athletes that we produce in this country that are fast, that are strong, and that can, play a dynamic style. But then we have a little bit of creativity that I don't think that we've had before in the past, or at least to the same level, that then just adds kind of the next level to it, because as we saw in years past, the teams with the Michael Bradleys and Clint Dempsey's and Landon Donovans who have the engine to go for 90 minutes, they can compete with almost anyone. But there's a difference between competing and then, as you said, that different word of results. Can you go from being competitive to being a winning team? And, you see in our midfield now, it's still that same mindset. Like Weston McKennie is still going to just run all over the pitch for 90 minutes. Tyler Adams is still going to just hunt everyone down for 90 minutes. But then Weston McKennie might show up in the box and like do some flying side scorpion kick that he did for Juventus. That
unbelievable, by the way.
You're like, oh, okay, like, but Ali Bedoya, I love you, but I don't know if I've ever seen you do that before.
Oh, because listen, big Union guy. I love Bedoya. Bedoya's my man, but like
I knew I shouldn't have picked him.
But like Bedoya, you should be playing right back, even for the Union. But like, no, listen, I get what you're saying, like 100%. Because listen, at the highest levels, right? Like you're not going to be able to just like grind out results and like stay in games, like because you need a little bit of separation, and that comes from having soccer players, like having good, like really quality, like really exciting, like the Pulisic, Reyna, those guys, like even for me, like a guy like Jordan Morris, who like maybe isn't the most like technical guy, but like he reminds me, and I'll catch flack for this, right? But like he reminds me of Jamie Vardy. Like he's nonstop, and the things that he creates just because he's nonstop make him successful. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's and that's okay. But I agree. Like, listen, it's exciting to look at, McKennie and Adams, who are just going to like hunt people down, and then they have the flip side of West can score unbelievable goals, but then they can also give the ball to like a Pulisic who can run at anybody. Like he's shown that he can run at anybody, right? Like Gio, who like consistently unlocks things for Erling so that he can score a bag of goals, right? Like those, it's exciting to see, and I think that is I think that's just, I think it's just super exciting. I think I think it's why it's fun. It's fun to watch the team now. And I know people say like, oh, why are they playing like Trinidad and Tobago? And like, it's stupid. They beat them 7-0. But it's like, I think the reverse side of that is like, guys, remember that time that we didn't go to World Cup because we lost to Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah.
Like in Trinidad and Tobago, like you need to get those results. Like you should be getting those results against those teams, right? And then you should be having games against like the Mexicos and the Canadas that are like a little bit more competitive, but you need to be able to do the business with whatever roster you have out there. But yeah, listen, I agree, and I think the people fail to recognize some of that stuff from, because they look and obviously we're talking about from a bigger population, because obviously people watch soccer on TV that maybe aren't involved, right? But like then they look at Barcelona like, oh, this is how soccer needs to be played, and then like, Steve's dad is coaching his team. And he's like, guys, we got to connect. This player has to move here and then play backwards and all this, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know, and I think that's a big piece of the coaching courses. I know that we didn't talk about them a ton, but like I think the grassroots coaching courses are so massive for this country because I think that they kind of teach, they make being able to teach kids very accessible to everyone. To parents, like they don't need, like parents, you don't need to spend $5,000 a month on like a professional trainer with an accent. Like you can just do it. You're like, here's an activity that you can do that just like throws kids in something that they're going to see on the weekend that gets them comfortable with being able to play soccer, right? So it's like, it's good.
Yeah, maybe that can be where we cap it off, is the coaching education piece of it. So you're now A licensed, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So maybe you kind of walk somebody through what the coaching courses are like in this country, what it's like to be now an A licensed coach, maybe for some aspiring coaches out there, current coaches out there. Give us a broader view of kind of what our coaching courses look like.
Yeah. So I know that some people do not like them. I love coaching courses. I think that, listen, they're not something where you go there and like you learn all these new things about soccer that like you never knew before in your entire life, right? Mm-hmm. I think that if for nothing else, the connections that you make there are absolutely massive. Like I was just on the phone with a guy that I ran a course with, like Paul Payne, who used to be at Bloomsburg for a long time. Like he was my advanced national for the NSCAA, United Soccer coaches now. Like Dean Wurzberger, who was my B license instructor, like he was the head coach at Washington for like a long time. Like we had cake together because we had the same birthday. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would have never known, like Dean Wurzberger, like Dean's the man. So I'm a big fan of the coaching course, and I'm not just saying that because, I teach some of the grassroots stuff now, but I think that it's such a good way to meet people, to fully engulf yourself in, and again, like I've said environment probably 7,000 times on this, but like to put yourself in an environment where like you're about it, like you're talking soccer, like guys are drinking beers. Can I say beer? I can say beers, right?
Yeah.
Like guys are drinking beers afterwards, and we're talking about the Bud Light bottle is like the number, you know what I mean? Like, and those are the conversations you have that you get to do like all day long. Like you wake up in the morning, you're talking soccer, you're listening to soccer, you're coaching soccer, you're getting feedback on soccer. I would say to anybody that is thinking about, coaching, or maybe not even thinking about coaching. So United Soccer Coaches has this thing 30 under 30, which I was a part of, which was awesome. So basically like you apply for it. They pick, I think 15 women, 15 men a year. And basically, that's being recognized is all well and good, but like what it really gives you is it gives you the opportunity to go to convention, which is a huge networking piece for anybody that's a young coach. And then they also pay for one of your courses. So I took my premier diploma with United Soccer. It might've been NSCAA still at that time, for free. Like I didn't have to pay to fly. Like I went to Florida for a week. It was awesome. So I think that the value in them isn't listen, you're definitely going to gain some soccer insight. But I think the way that you think about the game, I think the way that you plan training sessions, I think the way that you plan game day operations, I think the way that you, I think the new USSF courses have been awesome because it's so much more about rapport and communication and connections with players. Like, so I took my A license is technically the youth one. I didn't take the senior one. But it's almost like you go into, and so like my minor was in secondary ed at Chestnut Hill. So like a lot of the stuff you talk about is like adolescent psychology and development stages and stuff like that. And it's like the way that you speak to kids, right? Because like they're kids first. The way that you talk to kids is going to be different from the way that you speak to a 9-year-old, the way that you talk to even a 10-year-old, the way that you talk to a 14-year-old, the way that you talk to a 19-year-old, right? Like, so like those, I think my recent A license was so good in that, because it really makes you reflect on like how you build rapport, how you connect with players, and then how you're able to convey the message that you're trying to convey, right? Like I just like, maybe Brendan's okay with me just shouting like, Brendan, stop being shit, right? And like, and that maybe works for you, right? But like for Steve, maybe like,
yeah,
I need to go over Steve and be like, hey Steve, like maybe next time, position your body here so that you're away from that player, whatever, right? Like, and I can do the same thing within the same training session, right? Like I can have those different conversations with all those players. So no, listen, I love the coaching course. I mean, I got people that I still talk to from today that that I met there. I've made connections from work relations with people like my instructors. You know what I mean? So it's like they're awesome. Plus, if you get lucky, you get to go to great places like Casa Grande, Arizona, where there is literally nothing. So dirt. So so no, I'm a huge proponent of them for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's the big thing, that even for someone who is skeptical about really the content of the course or what you're actually going to be learning, as you said, the connections that you're going to make there are huge, are big time, especially if you're a young coach who's trying to network and find roles and find coaching positions. Like that's a great way for you to go and meet people in the area and talk to other people who work at clubs and say, hey, like, are you looking for any coaches, or can I come be your assistant? Like a lot of guys and girls that are very similar to you, in that if someone was like, hey, can I just come and shadow you and watch how you coach, and maybe then that leads to something else down the road for you to be able to coach. Like that's a great way for you to get your foot in the door with these coaching courses. And two, a lot of times it shows clubs or it shows colleges that you have a certain standard, you have a certain level that you at least know. You can show that you know the concepts that the kind of country has set to try and teach our kids and try and coach our kids. So that is, a good thing to have on your resume.
Yeah, and I think college wise, like I think college wise, it's pretty good. I think it shows that you're willing to do some extra stuff. But I think at the youth level, like it's I think almost a priority, right? I mean, and in fairness, it just helps, honestly. If nothing else, I know people like are like, oh, I'm not gonna. And in fairness, like they're kind of expensive. You know what I mean? Like,
they're not cheap.
No, I mean my A license was I think like $5, and that didn't include like me flying down to Arizona 3 times. You know what I mean? So that's another aspect of it. And I think from an individual like growth standpoint, like if you're gonna do it, like if you're gonna do what we do, like you got to be fully invested in it. And like that's one of those things, right? So
yeah, it just if we bring the podcast full circle and kind of tie into what we were talking about at the very beginning, it's just it comes down to if you are willing to put in the work. And in this case, it might look different than working a valet job when you're trying to become a coach. In this case, it may mean that you got to drop $5,000 and another grand on flights and hotels and stuff like that to be able to better yourself and put yourself in a better position to impact more kids' lives. So it just comes down to how bad do you want it,
Yeah, and I think it's just like anything else, and I think I gave you this piece of advice too, was like just say yes. If nothing else, you say yes to anything, right? Whether that means you're doing U8 Academy on Friday nights, or you're doing Rec Select on Saturdays, or you're I forget what did Monu call their like really like young kids? What was that?
Oh God, I don't even remember.
I can't remember what it was.
But yeah, that was my first. Yeah, so we'll do a quick stories on here. That was my first ever job that Jules in coaching that Jules hooked up for me. He was like, yeah, and I didn't even do it with you. It was with Dave and somebody else. Actually, you know who I did it with a couple times? Why am I forgetting his name? What's the Harkham guy?
Oh, Graver.
Yeah, Graver. Sorry.
Yeah,
Graver.
yeah.
I know him. I don't know why I didn't. I would go to Monu and coach like 5-year-olds. And if anyone gets into coaching, this is probably going to be one of your first gigs.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the level or anything that you've done before, like you're going to start at the very bottom. And it was, oh man, it was such a crazy experience. And I remember like being there sometimes. I'm like, I'm not even coaching soccer. Like I'm just babysitting kids.
You're a babysitter that has soccer balls.
Yeah. But I remember a funny part about it was, like you said always just say yes, always say yes. And so I did. And I never had really talked to anyone about money or you about money or what was going to be. I just was like, this is an opportunity for me to get my foot in the door and get something out of it. And hopefully he won't mind me sharing this, but a good buddy of both of ours, Joe Cass, always used to come up to me and be like, well, how much are they paying you? How much, what are they giving you? What are they giving you? And I was like, honestly, dude, like nothing. I'm just, trying to go get the experience and hopefully it leads to something. And he was like, oh, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Make sure they're paying you. I'm like, Joe, like just relax. Okay. Good things come to those who wait. And then, sure enough, then I was coaching at Monu or coaching at Delco or something. And he texted me one time and he's like, hey, do you have any help? Like, I'm trying to get into the club coaching game. Like, can you put me in contact with anyone? Like, help me. And I'm like, yeah, of course. But I was just thinking, I'm like, maybe if you're a little more patient and not coming up to me saying, how much are they paying you? How much are they paying you? Like,
oh, Joe Cass, character.
Good guy.
Love that guy. Love that family, in fairness. But
all right, man, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, dude. Listen, I hope you didn't get me in too much trouble, so that'll be good. And then, but listen, no, in fairness, like I said, love the show. Loved catching up. All good things. Glad we got to talk. So it was awesome, man. It was awesome. I really appreciate you having, taking the time and having me on. So
yeah, of course, man. I definitely had this one circled as an option for one day. So I'm happy that we were able to make it happen, and I hope people listening and are going to enjoy it as well. And if you're out there listening, you have any questions, any comments on the episode, I'd love to hear it. Make sure to kind of do the rounds, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. Get the word out about this one, because this is definitely a good episode. And just final word is you can play soccer. Soccer is for everyone, guys. Soccer is
for everyone. Soccer is for everyone.
All right, Jules, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and talk to you soon.
All right, Pete. Thanks, man.